Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing takeaways from the Week 9 slate of the 2022 NFL season. So on this week of NFL action, well, you know what, actually, we'll just go ahead and get right into the action. Starting with the Buccaneers, in a must-win game, they get the win and regain the lead in the NFC South. So, despite his receivers having some issues with drops, Tom Brady was able to lead the Buccaneers down the field for a game-winning drive to beat the Rams 16-3, which was about the most productive thing the Buccaneers did all season. Brady also reached over 100,000 yards passing, which is just an absurd stat, but given how long he's played, it's not surprising that he's reached that stat. But what was surprising was how much the Buccaneers offense stalled until that final drive when they just seemingly woke up. If they could do that, play like that more consistently, this team might actually be good. Nonetheless, it was not good for the first three quarters though, as these teams slogged their way through it. But Tampa Bay found a way to score 10 points within the final 8 minutes and 7 seconds of regulation with a Ryan Suckup field goal and then a touchdown pass to Cade Orton for the go-ahead score. Following their game against Baltimore last week, Tampa Bay's offense still seemed out of sync even with extra time to prepare. That game was on Thursday. The Buccaneers aren't back in playoff form yet, but they did enough to snap a 3-game losing streak against a struggling Rams squad that also badly needed a win. Brady is still clutch in situations where he needs to be clutch, and the Buccaneers have moved back in the first place in NFC South as the Falcons lost, and the Buccaneers hold a head-to-head victory or head-to-head win over the Falcons in Week 5. And perhaps with this performance, with this win, they can build off of it and get some positive momentum going forward. They do go to Germany to play the Seahawks, so if they needed momentum going into a game, it's certainly that one. Packers. Well, tough loss to the Lions here, and it also showcased that their offense is very much talent deficient, and because of their talent deficiencies and because they whiffed on at the trade deadline, perhaps they should make a push for Odell Beckham. Clearly, the Packers have the worst offense in the NFC North. On Sunday, they lost 15-9 to the Lions, who allowed the most points and yards per game through Week 8. In the first half, Rodgers threw 2 interceptions inside the 5-yard line, then turned the ball over for a third time in Detroit territory during the second quarter. Early in the contest, the Packers would lose Romeo Doubs and Aaron Jones to ankle injuries. I think Dobbs went down on literally what I heard was literally the first play of the game, while Jones had a noticeable limp and grimace. Apparently the Packers just pulled him from the game, even though Jones himself said he could have came back in. And Rodgers, well, he might be entirely to blame. He might be partly to blame, but his inopportune turnovers certainly did not help the Packers in this game. He threw 3 interceptions, which is certainly unlike him. But the Packers did come into this game ranked 26 in points per game, and it's clear once again through another uninspiring performance from their offense that they need to add another playmaker, especially now that Dobbs and Jones are dealing with ankle injuries. The Packers should be on the phone with Odell Beckham Jr.'s agent, asking about his recovery, where he's at. If he isn't far from a return, he could certainly help an offense that's struggling badly. From what I heard, it sounds like he might be ready to go by next week, or maybe not next week, this week or next week. So it sounds like he's really close, which is weird because I was hearing lately that it was December return. But if he's ready to go this week, Packers should definitely make a push for him. And apparently also the Packers made some calls at the trade deadline. They tried to get Chase Claypool, but the Steelers passed and sent him to the Bears. They also tried DJ Moore and Darren Waller, but unable to strike a deal with either of those teams. Now, obviously signing Beckham doesn't cure the Packers and doesn't certainly fix him and make him a better team, but he's a veteran playmaker who can bring an immediate spark to a bottom tier offense. So But he makes a difference. But just like DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona, one man out with the wide receiver position isn't going to save the team, but he can make a difference and hopefully, provide some semblance of a spark to get the team going. Bears. They lost their game to the Dolphins, but they did not go down easy. It was a shootout, and Justin Fields continues to make strides in what was a career day for the young man. So in a fast-paced, high-scoring battle between the Bears and the Dolphins, Justin Fields would break the single-game rushing record set by Michael Vick at 173 yards when he ran for 178 yards and a touchdown. He did only throw for 123 yards, but still an efficient outing as a passer, registering 3 scores through the air with a 106.7 passer rating. Naturally, Fields would prefer a win over a record-setting rushing total and passing efficiency, but nonetheless, the Bears have scored 29-plus points in 3 consecutive contests, which is certainly a step up from their earlier season performances where they were struggling to clear 23 points in the game. And their offense with Fields' progression as a dual threat under center. In other words, it seems like the Bears are kind of adopting the Baltimore Ravens approach on offense and kind of utilizing Fields similar to how the Ravens utilized Lamar Jackson. Now, Fields hasn't thrown for more than 190 yards in any of his last 4 outings, but he's rushed for 408 yards and 3 touchdowns in that span. And I think as he continues to build a stronger rapport of his newly acquired wideout Chase Claypool, the Bears might be able to field a dynamic offense that could reach top 10 in yards and scoring. Now, offensive line is still an issue, but that's going to have to be addressed in the offseason. Fields has taken the most sacks through the first 8 weeks of the season, that number being 31. Even though Chicago's defense has regressed without Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith, the Bears' offense outlook seems bright with Fields under center. And I think really if you're the Bears, that's what you want to see. I don't think the Bears, let's be honest, obviously every team wants to be in contention, but realistically speaking, the Bears weren't going to be contenders this year. But I think the biggest thing you need to look for in the Bears this year is what is Justin Fields, and does he and even though he was drafted by the old regime, does he still fit in? And I think so far the answer is yes. I think Justin Fields has certainly played well enough to earn the starting job going forward with the new regime, going into the next season with the new regime. Moving on to Sunday Night Football. Normally I talk about both teams, but I think I'll just keep things short today. And just talk about the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes would complete 43 of 68 passing attempts for 466 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, adding 63 yards on 6 carries and a touchdown. So Mahomes, a one-man wrecking crew, 68 passing attempts. Man, it's just, that's a crazy number right there. But he, like I said, one-man wrecking crew. And the passing attempts were a career high on a night that the Chiefs defense was up to the task of forcing the Chiefs into short yardage gains throughout the air. Basically, they did a good job understanding that Travis Kelce was weapon number 1, and they did their best to contain him. They did their best to contain the Chiefs offense. And, the game did go into overtime. So, like I said, that Chiefs defense, man, that was the only reason why the Titans were in this game. That was just it right there. Tennessee would force Mahomes and the Chiefs to go 9 consecutive drives without scoring, which would tie the longest streak Mahomes has had in his career. It also marked the 9th career game for Mahomes with more than 400 yards passing, which he has now done in consecutive games. After failing to score in the second half, Mahomes would cap off the second-to-last possession with a 14-yard scamper to bring the team within 2, and then the team would convert the 2-point conversion to tie the game. The roller coaster win was a big one for the Chiefs, given that the Bills lost, because now with their win and the Bills lost, they're tied for that number 1 spot in the AFC with the Bills heading into the second half of the season. However, the Bills do have a head-to-head, or they do have the tiebreaker over the Chiefs, because these teams played each other earlier in the season and the Bills won. So ultimately, if Kansas City wants that number 1 seed, they just have to win more games than Buffalo. Next week they visit the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So certainly, I'm not going to say it's an easy win, because honestly, with how some of these games have gone, with how certain teams have played, what is an easy win? I have no idea. The Jaguars were down 24-0 against the Raiders. They were down bad, or they were down against the Raiders, and then they rallied and won the game. Now the Raiders are a bad football team, despite all the effort that they put into building up their roster. It seems to be all for nothing for the Raiders this season. And as for the Jaguars, well, they finally figured out how to win a game for the first time in quite some time. I don't remember the last time the Jaguars won a game. Was it week 3 against the Chargers? It might have been week 3 against the Chargers. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, who knows? Ultimately, big win for the Chiefs here. And hopefully for the Titans, Ryan Tannehill comes back. Props to or credit to Malik Willis, man, stepping in into that game and doing the best he can. But yeah, without that defense, Malik Willis would have had a tougher time in that game. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.